Hello and welcome to the first #HowISafari review of a 2020 Safari LTD figure. We're already quite a bit into the new year now, but you know what? We're getting started, earlier than some people, I'm sure. Much later than others, but whatever. Today we are looking at the Safari LTD 2020 Edmontosaurus, and I really like this figure. Safari kindly sent this one over along with the Edmontosaurus and the Pachycephalosaurus, and this is not my favorite of the group. In fact, it's probably my least favorite, but I still really like it, so that's still saying something. And in general, I've been really pleasantly surprised. It's one of those figures that you just glance at it, take it in, and it's just really pleasant looking, and there's just a nice quality and character to it. As far as the specifics of the figure are concerned, first of all, detail. This figure has wonderful sculpted scalation, and what I really like about it is the amount of variation in size among the scales. You have these larger scales on the body. Okay, cool. And then you get some even bigger ones and some weird kind of gross warty scales over here. And then down on the feet you have these really small fine scales, which get a little muddled because the smaller the scales get, the harder they are to sculpt and the more smooth areas you end up with, but they're still pretty well executed for the most part. And on the head you have more small scalation as well. In fact, it might even be smaller. You got these really nice little crisp scales along there, and then larger scales on the neck. Really smooth, tiny scales on the crest. That's just, yeah. I tend to think of Safari figures as having pretty much always just one uniform size of scale. Usually a figure will just have one scale stamp for the entire body texture. I'm not sure if that's actually true, but I think it is, or at least it's close to all the figures that have that sort of style going on. So seeing this much size and shape variation with the scales on the skin is really great. It's a nice change, and it just really improves the overall feeling of quality you get when you look at this figure. It just shows a little extra sculpting and manufacturing effort from the company, so that's excellent. Another detail thing is the eyes. I'm looking at my notes, so I was I knew there was another detail thing, and then I had to look over. Yes, the eyes. Anyhow, the eyes are really well done. They are exquisitely genuine and lifelike looking. There's something about them, just the glossiness and how they've been painted especially. The sculpt is obviously good too, but it is basically just a ball of plastic, so it's really the paint job, I think, that makes them shine, literally and figuratively. The Pachycephalosaurus has this going on as well. I can't wait to show off that figure in a review soon. Yeah, there's just something about the eyes on these 2020 models, especially this one. This one probably has the best eyes of the bunch. It's just really lifelike, really pretty to look at, and they're tiny too. I mean, even on a large figure like this, the eyes are still a relatively minuscule part of it, so it's cool to see that small detail, not smudged or messed up, but really well done, because even Safari messes up eyes sometimes. The 2017 Raptor is notorious for having really smudgy eyes with pupils looking in all sorts of kooky, crazy directions. None of that here. Minimal asymmetry. There's a little asymmetry on the beak and the nostrils, but the eyes look pretty good. And yeah. Another thing that I would like to talk about real briefly is the pose. The pose there's not much to say. It's pretty basic. It's a pretty neutral pose. I will say it's a little, how shall I say, angle dependent. It looks nice from this side, but something about this side is just way less attractive. I think this leg is super straight. This one is extending really straight and far back. Maybe he's standing up too straight. Maybe he needs to be crouching down a little more. I don't know. There's something about the pose that, from certain angles, it's fine, and from others, it's it's a little awkward. It's not bad, though. It gets the job done. As far as paint is concerned, I already complimented the eyes a lot. I will say the rest of the paint job, it's a little boring. It's fine. It's not, bad, and there's some nice, subtle dry brushing. It sort of fades out from this more yellowish tan with some good sort of dry brushing texture and detail to it, down to this lighter beige and cream color on the bottom of the animal, and then black accents and all that. It's good. It's just, there's nothing about it that really jumps out at me. And it's also a little bit ADHD, if you ask me, because this figure has bands on the tail, it's got spots all over this area, it's got these tiny little gray stripes on the face, it's got stripes on this leg, but not on this one, and it's pick a pattern. I don't know, something about that kind of bugs me. I know Safari's done stuff like that before, but there's something about this figure that really feels like, instead of coming up with a unique pattern, the sculptor just kind of threw everything at one figure, so that's a minor thing, but the more I look at it, the more it bothers me. Anything else to talk about the paint? Oh, I do really, really like the red on the crest. It's a minor addition, but what I like about it is just the way it fades really nicely from black into red. There's something about seeing the black and red together with that nice sort of fade transition between them. It's just really pleasing. So that's a small thing, but definitely something I like. As far as accuracy is concerned, this is a pretty accurate Edmontosaurus, probably the most accurate E. regalis on the market. Not perfect. The actual, processes on the vertebrae, on the top of the vertebrae, are probably should be taller than they actually are. Obviously, this figure doesn't include individual processes on individual bones, but you get my point. The back line is a little low, and from this sort of top to bottom axis, just the tail and torso look a little short, a little serpentine or something. So I think the ridge of the back should just be a little higher. As it is, it's like almost at the exact same height as just the top of the hips. It barely comes up past there. And looking at most skeletal references, they should be a bit higher. Obviously, it's not like, an Acrocanthosaurus's back or anything crazy, but it's a very, very low, streamlined sort of back line. And it's a weird issue. It's hard to describe, and it's weird because, I can't think of another dinosaur model I've ever seen that has this specific anatomical problem, but there you go. Another accuracy thing, the sculptor could not possibly have known this at the time of sculpting this figure, but just for educational purposes, Edmontosaurus should have hooves on its front feet. We now know, based on a mummified front hand of an Edmontosaurus, that it should have just a massive block of keratin right here. So obviously not fault of the company or the sculptor. For when this figure was made, the paper came out a couple weeks after this figure was released, so kind of unlucky, but ultimately not a case of actual inaccuracy, just a case of genuine outdatedness, which I do not have a problem with because it is inescapable unless you can see the future. So, a couple important shout-outs before we get to the final rating and all that. First of all, go check out Spino Dude Designs' review of this. I almost said Spino Dude Reviews, but he's called Spino Dude Designs on Instagram. He was actually just called Spino Dude on YouTube by the end of it all, so I don't know why I wanted to call him Spino Dude Reviews, just have it. He has also just put up a review of this figure right at almost hopefully the same time that I have put up mine, so go check out his if you haven't already. And yeah, you can listen to his thoughts on this same model, which should be interesting. And then, of course, if you would like to purchase this beautiful Edmontosaurus, you can do so at safariltd.com or at amazon.com/safariltd. Yeah, so in terms of an overall rating, I'm kind of struggling to rate this one in my head. I literally am just improvising a rating here. I'm just going to throw out 8.5 for now. 8.5 seems good. Around an 8 or an 8.5 is usually the rating I give to those figures where I'm like, I really like this figure, but I don't love it. And it's really good objectively, but it's still got some legitimate things that I would complain about personally. Yeah, it's right in that category. It's definitely not the best figure of the 2021s I have thus far, but I really like it. And in terms of just pure aesthetics, it's just a very nice, pleasant herbivore. And before we go, I'll bring out some size comparisons. Here's the Safari LTD Utyrannus, and here is the old, when did this come out? 2010. This is the 2010 E. regalis from Safari. My goodness, how this company has progressed. This really puts it into perspective. This figure, I mean, it's got a more dramatic pose, I guess, but other than that, this is pretty much better in every conceivable way. It also does have some brighter colors, but I don't really like the colors that much. It looks like a pumpkin. Anyhow, another quick note, in terms of size, as you can see, the new Edmontosaurus here is quite large, and of course I didn't bring any of these figures with me for the review, but for the record, if you put this figure with the feathered T-Rex, the Triceratops, it just looks great. Next to these fellow really large Hell Creek, late Cretaceous North America, iconic dinosaurs, they just make a fantastic group for your shelf. So anyhow, that is about it. Thank you very, very much for watching. I thank everyone who is supporting the new Instagram page. If you haven't clicked follow already, then heck can do that, and I will see you next time.